learn how to make a simple Chinese paper lantern. A friend of mine gave me this cute little red lantern for Christmas, and it reminded me of making Chinese paper lanterns when I was in grade school. Chinese New Year is approaching, and so I thought it would be a fun craft to make together. This is one of the most simple paper crafts that you can make, so it's a great learn to cut activity for a young child. We're going to start with a 8.5 by 11 sheet of red copy paper, and we'll fold this in half, hot dog style. So there's a couple ways that you can make your lantern, and one way is to go ahead and use a ruler and mark out your lines that you're going to cut along, making 1/2 inch lines all down the length of your piece of paper. This takes some time, but it makes very even cuts and even strips of paper on your lantern. On the unfolded side of the paper, we're going to draw a line that's about 3/4 of an inch to an inch away from the edge. And then we're going to draw the lines from that line over to the folded edge. This would be a good learn to measure activity, and it helps with accuracy with lines and so forth. This would be a good skill to learn. So now I have all my lines drawn all the way down the page. With all of our lines drawn, we can begin to cut from the folded edge down to the line that we drew on the unfolded edge of our paper. This makes it very easy to make straight and even cuts. Here, I've cut all of those lines on my paper down to the line that I drew on the unfolded edge of the paper. Now, we just open our paper up and then bring the two ends together to make our paper lantern. I'm going to use a glue stick to glue the two ends together. So I'll just put some glue down this last strip on one end. Oh, it's trying to get away from me. Okay, so it goes all the way across the end, and I'll bring the other end over and put it on top of that. So the strip on this end is going to go on top of the strip from the other end that I have the glue on, and attach those two ends together. And there we have our first lantern. Now this is made out of copy paper, so it's quite flexible, but it hangs with a nice shape. Now we just attached a handle to this, and this is all that we did when I was in school, but I'm going to add an extra step to this simple Chinese paper lantern. I'm going to put a lining inside of the lantern that is this kind of yellow or yellow-orange color. I'm going to fold it in half, and then I'm going to make some fringe along this bottom edge by just cutting some narrow little strip lines all the way across this bottom edge. They're about 1.5 to 2 inches into the paper, and they're only about 1/4 of an inch apart. I did not draw these lines on first. I'm just clipping. Okay, so when I open it up, I have this nice fringe all the way across the bottom. Then I'm going to roll it and glue the two pieces together here, just like I did the lantern. So I roll it up, and I'm going to overlap the two ends and glue them together like I did the lantern, which makes another tube. And I'm going to slip this tube inside of my paper lantern. Okay, I want this top part to come up through the top of the lantern, and I'm going to match up the top of those two tubes, but I'm going to let the bottom fringe hang out the bottom, and that pushes my paper lantern out into this nice shape, and it looks like there's light inside of there. And I'm going to use my stapler and just staple this in place, just one place. It'll hold it in place like that. Lastly, I'm going to make a handle for my lantern by just cutting a strip off of another piece of red copy paper that's about 3/4 to an inch wide. And again, I did not measure this, but you could use your ruler. Then I'm just going to staple that to the top of my lantern. I'll take one staple on each side. Okay, so there now I have a handle for my lantern, and I can decorate this if I'd like to. I could use some washi tape on the top or the bottom if I'd like, but I think what I'm going to do is add a yellow strip right around here with some more of my yellow copy paper. So I'm going to cut a piece for decoration that's about 3/4 inch wide down the long side of my copy paper, and it's going to go around the top of my lantern. I'm going to put glue around the top here and then place my decoration on here. There's a lot of gold decoration on these simple Chinese paper lanterns, so this will mimic that gold look. Which makes a nice decoration on the top. And there we have our paper lantern. So simple. I'm going to make a second simple Chinese paper lantern out of red cardstock. It's a stiffer paper, and I'm not going to put the liner in the center. I'm also not going to measure the lines. I'm just going to do the cutting down to the edge using my judgment on about how far apart about 1/2 inch is. So I just cut down, try to make it as straight as I can and as even as I can. And for a small child, these stripes or these strips could be wider. You could make them even up to 1 inch wide to make it simpler and to go faster for them. I open up my lantern, and this time I'm just going to staple this on either side. And this has a lot more body to it because it's made from cardstock, and it holds its shape like this one does with help from the second piece of paper. So I'm not going to add anything to the center of it, but I am going to add the decorative strip and the handle. Okay, then it looks very much like my other, and it will hold its shape as it sits up. I just kind of give it a little bit of an extra push to get it to have a nice shape. And on this one, I'm going to add a little tassel on the bottom. I'm going to make the tassel out of my gold paper again. And I'll make it about 2 inches long. And again, I'm going to fold my paper, and I'm going to cut little strips, tiny little strips into it, and cut it close to the top, but not all the way through. Then I'm just going to leave this all together like that, and I'm going to add a little glue to this top edge, and I'm going to roll this inward to make my tassel. Just going to be a paper tassel in a roll. Keep it as tightly rolled as you can. Might add just a little more glue, make sure it stays. Okay. Kind of fluff those up just a little bit. Now, I've got some red thread that I'm going to tie to the top of this. I'll cut about a 2-foot piece. I'm going to wrap it around a couple times and tie it on there. And then I'm going to tie it to the handle and let it dangle down from the center of the lantern downwards, so it's dangling out the bottom of the lantern. You do not have to do this. This is an optional step. I just thought it'd be fun to try. So I'm going to put the thread up through my lantern. And I'm going to make sure that it dangles all the way down underneath my lantern, like that. So I'm going to then tie my strings, one to each handle. Okay, tied it to one handle, and it's dangling down underneath my lantern. So now I'm going to take the other thread and tie it to the other handle. So you might have to help some of the kids do this, or just leave this step off. That's okay as well. You could use embroidery floss or string or anything that you have. And now there is my tassel dangling from underneath my lantern. I like the way that looks. Alright, so there's a second lantern. And now I'm going to make a miniature simple Chinese paper lantern. I folded my paper in half, hot dog style. I'm going to cut along my fold, and then I'm just going to use half of my piece of paper for my lantern. So now I'm going to fold this in half, and I'm going to make my cuts from the folded edge over to the unfolded edge, at about a ½ inch apart. Open that up, and this makes a little wider lantern. If you like that, that's okay, but I'd like mine to be a little bit smaller. And so I'm going to cut off about 4 of those little strips, and then bring that around and glue it like I did for the large lantern, and I like that size better. And I've already cut a handle for it. And there is a miniature Chinese paper lantern. I could also put my little gold rim around the top and make several of them and make a garland. Here's how my garland turned out after my How to Make Simple Chinese Paper Lanterns Do-It-Yourself craft 3 ways. For more craft ideas, come on over to welcometananas.com and join the fun.